From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
The people you see behind me walked nearly 2 miles this morning from Chase Field, making it known to legislators they want to see a change.
The Red for Ed movement is putting pressure on Governor Doug Ducey and the legislature to boost school funding. I'm here at the Capitol tracking the latest.
I spoke with both parents and students about how they feel coming here to the Rio Vista Recreation Center instead of school.
Cronkite News starts now.
A historic day for Arizona. Tens of thousands of people fill the streets of downtown Phoenix in a Red for Ed walkout. Good evening, I'm Gabriel Gamino.
And I'm Nicole Costantino. Thank you for joining us. We have team coverage of this statewide teacher walkout, from the massive rally at the state capitol to the impact to the state legislature and Arizona families.
Let's begin with Cronkite News reporter Emily Richardson with the latest at the Capitol.
I'm at the state capitol where Red for Ed supporters gathered to let state lawmakers know they are not giving up on increased funding. Educators gathered outside of Chase Field this morning to kick off their walkout. A sea of red swept through downtown Phoenix as they walked to the state capitol where they demanded change.
This movement was born out of the experience of looking into our students' eyes and knowing that our state, the people who sit in this building, do not fund their success. That's what started this movement. That's why we're here.
While Governor Doug Ducey said that he would give teachers a 20% pay increase, protesters say that does not address the lack of funding for public schools in the state.
They think Red for Ed is simply about a teacher raise. That's part of the puzzle, but it's about bringing $1 billion back to our students.
Why we're here is not all about a raise. It's really about the kids.
Last month, Red for Ed announced 5 demands, including a 20% pay increase, education funding being restored to 2008 levels, competitive pay for all education support staff, permanent salary, including annual raises, and no new tax cuts. Educators we talked to were hesitant to say how long the walkout would last, but the movement would continue until their demands were met.
For me, until something's done more about the funding for the kids, then I chose to walk out.
The initial Arizona DPS estimate for rally attendance at the Capitol was 40,000, but the Arizona Educators Association said up to 75,000 people attended Red for Ed events downtown. Live at the Capitol, Emily Richardson, Cronkite News.
While the teacher walkout has impacted families of more than 800,000 school children, many in the community are rallying around the teachers' cause. Cronkite News reporter Megan Meyer is tracking down the families who are offering their Red for Ed support.
Today, advocates for increased school funding found strength in numbers. But it wasn't only educators that showed up. Parents had their own reasons for marching.
She starts pre-K next year, and I want her to see a fully funded classroom. Like, we have kids who have never seen one. I want her to be able to have the new crayons and to have the new stuff to engage her.
Some parents worry that without additional funding, their children will be deprived of a full and rich education. They say they marched to demand more for their kids. Reagan Guzman marches for her son, a 6-year-old with big hopes and dreams.
My 6-year-old, he told me he wanted to be a teacher. And it was hard for me to feel really good about it because it's difficult for him to support a family and to get what he needs to be an educator and be able to do that. So I'm fighting for our future and for our kids.
Guzman hopes that the changes she and so many others rally for today will allow her son to be a teacher just like her. In Phoenix, Megan Meyer, Cronkite News.
Students who had the day off also marched alongside their teachers, including those who have made headlines with their own activism for ending gun violence in schools. Cronkite News reporter Michaela Moorhead talked to members of the March for Our Lives movement.
Jacob Martinez, high school student and March for Our Lives activist, chose to keep marching today.
We see how big class sizes are. We see the lack of school supplies, funding, and whatnot that the schools receive. And it's ridiculous. We can't receive a quality education when the governor and the legislature refuses to give sufficient funding to what should be the #1 priority.
Since the Parkland shooting, they have been fighting for their own cause, but Dylan Lifshitz does not believe Red for Ed is detracting from their efforts.
Separate movements are actually working really well hand in hand.
Martinez says it's time for the legislature to step up and consider the demands of both students and teachers.
These teachers, they're going to stand strong because they're not doing it for themselves. If they were doing it for themselves, they would have took the raise and been done with it. They're doing it for us, and we appreciate them for it.
At the Capitol, Michaela Moorhead, Cronkite News.
Of course, the mission of the Red for Ed movement is to force the Arizona legislature into action. Governor Doug Ducey issued a statement this morning asking parents to push lawmakers to approve his plan for a 20% teacher pay raise by 2020. Cronkite News reporter Jamie Fossenkemper is tracking the response. Jamie?
We spent the morning at the State House, reaching out to representatives and senators for their response about the Red for Ed walkout. Many were not available for comment. One very vocal opponent, Representative Kelly Townsend, did speak with us. While thousands of people protested just outside the window at the state capitol, Kelly Townsend met with us to set the record straight. She says she is not against teachers and she is not against students. She's against what she says is politicizing the issue.
Don't agree with using children, teachers, inconveniencing families, and all of that.
Earlier reports quoted Representative Townsend's desire to sue these very teachers to stop the walkout, but she made it clear hurting teachers is not her goal.
I'm not looking to sue teachers. What I'm trying to do is when you have teachers who are being harmed by this strike, if we have to extend the school year, I have had at least 200 emails now of teachers saying, I'm not for this. I'm supposed to start a job the day after. My kid's supposed to go on a mission, or a whole host of things that are going to interrupt and interfere and hurt people in our state and teachers. 22% of them didn't want this.
Early this afternoon, the Arizona Senate actually recessed until Monday. Meanwhile, the majority of the Republican leaders in the House have agreed to support Governor Doug Ducey's plan. Live in downtown Phoenix, Jamie Fossenkemper, Cronkite News.
Red for Ed leaders are calling this action a walkout rather than a strike because Arizona considers strikes unlawful. Director at the law firm Fenimore Craig, Jessica Post, says she expects any discipline to come from an administrative process initially, depending on the district's policies.
You would look and see how other states have handled the same type of situation in terms of determining whether there isn't a common law right for public employees to strike, and whether that whether that has changed since that opinion that was provided.
Those who have available time off will be in a much better place because that time is theirs to use. The only legal reference to a teacher strike comes from the 1971 Attorney General's opinion. Post says an opinion isn't binding.
And while most schools have closed their doors, some are staying open to help their students and their families. Point in other schools in the Levine School District are open today and tomorrow. The district says instead of canceling school altogether, they're working on a half-day schedule. They say they want to keep students on track, but they also want to give the teachers a chance to participate in the walkout.
We support the Red for Ed movement, but we did have to stay open to serve our students. And as far as funding public education, that is something that we as a district are always fighting for.
Landry says they are concerned if the schools close, many of their students will go without food for the day, as nearly 75% of the students are on the free and reduced lunch program. The district is also opening their after-school programs to everyone district-wide. As teachers are walking out, parents are walking into different centers and child care locations looking for care for their children. Reporter Sydney Eisenberg spoke with the parents and students at one drop-off site and how they're handling the change.
It's not a bad place to spend a school day if you're a kid.
It feels good because my brain gets to rest. Yeah.
Jaden Rivas is one of almost 100 students hanging out today at the Rio Vista Recreation Center in Peoria. 3 Peoria city centers opened their doors to students from the Peoria Unified School District during the walkout. While the Rio Vista Recreation Center is always open for before and after school programs, starting today, the center is extending their program's hours.
I spoke with John Sefton, the Community Services Director for the City of Peoria. He says that the staff here at the Rio Vista Recreation Center are treating today like a normal summer camp day, just on a Thursday.
We've known that this was a potential, so for the past several weeks we've been working on the logistics end.
The center plans to be open as long as the walkouts continue. However, some parents say they'll worry if their kids aren't back in class by Monday.
Then it becomes a little bit of a challenge, of course, but again, whatever it takes.
I don't think anybody wants, or at least I hope not anybody wants that to continue for any long period of time, but I mean, sometimes get to a point where push comes to shove and you have to do what you have to do.
Alicia Inger is a teacher in the Peoria Unified School District. She also came to the recreation center before a different mission, carpooling from here to the downtown protest.
We are not walking out on our students, we are walking out for our students. I have cried many nights wondering if I'm doing the right thing for them, and I know that I am, and I'm doing it for them. So
in Peoria, Sydney Eisenberg, Cronkite News.
For Red for Ed updates throughout the day, follow us on Facebook and Twitter and find our full multimedia coverage online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Before Border Patrol can secure the border, they'll need to secure more funds.
Coming up on Cronkite News, lawmakers debate on how resources will be provided for border protection.
Plus, we talk to members of the Syrian community about the ongoing war in Syria, hear their thoughts on the recent U.S. airstrikes in the country and why they say it's not enough to stop the Syrian regime.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles. In Cleveland. In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem. Live in Philadelphia.
From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Exploring, it's the lifeblood of the mission.
Human beings are a curious bunch.
What are we going to see when we get really close?
Just because an idea is crazy, it's not necessarily wrong.
We were on our way.
You don't get anywhere until you've tested the limits.
That carries an intensity you can't imagine.
You could hear people just, whoa.
Oh my God, absolutely spectacular. It's a rush. We ask a lot of our heroes.
We are at a remarkable moment.
We're going farther than any exploration ever has.
Lawmakers agreed at a hearing this Wednesday that the Customs and Border Patrol needs more money to secure our border. But exactly how to distribute funds and what to do after those funds are provided was a point of contention. Ariana Bustos brings us a story from our D.C. bureau.
When the Commissioner of the Customs and Border Protection, Kevin K. McAleenan, was asked by lawmakers what his vision was for the CBP, his answer was simple: more.
With the support of Congress to provide us the resources, authorities, and legislative changes we need, I believe that CBP will continue to make great strides across our core missions and in every area of our operations.
McAleenan testified to a House subcommittee this Wednesday that funding for a border wall was a start, and the CBP needs more money for staffing, technologies, and training. But California Congressman Lou Correa and other Democratic lawmakers asked McAleenan to prioritize.
Where would you say our priority is in terms of investment? On a wall, X-ray machines, trained personnel, trained dogs, and I know you're going to say all of it is good, But if you had a buck, what would you spend it on first?
McAleenan, when pressured, said non-intrusive inspection technologies for detection of narcotics, but insisted on a balanced distribution of funds. And Congresswoman Martha McSally, who chaired the hearing, said even if everyone comes to an agreement on how to secure the border, the systemic problems must be addressed.
In addition to the border wall, we also need a policy wall as well, which is why I have been calling for these border security loopholes to be closed.
McSally and other Republicans on the committee said immigration laws that allow asylum seekers, young children, and families in the U.S. while waiting for a court date is inefficient. McAleenan said with the support of Congress in all areas, including legislation, CBP can thrive.
Border security is national security. It's a nonpartisan issue.
Reporting from Washington, Ariana Bustos, Cronkite News.
McAleenan said along with getting funds for every area of Customs and Border Patrol operations, he aims to improve communication between the CBP and the administration.
President Trump has declared the recent U.S. airstrikes on Syria as, quote, mission accomplished. However, some members of the local Syrian community are voicing their concerns. We sat down with a group of them, hearing their thoughts on the attack, as reporter Adriana de Alba reports.
Step inside the home of Dr. Zaki Lababidi, and the war in Syria takes center stage. During a recent meal among friends and family, they welcomed Raid al-Saleh to Arizona. He's the leader of the White Helmets, a volunteer organization of first responders in Syria. As they sit around the dinner table, they discuss the recent U.S. airstrikes.
It's not enough. It is not enough. It is better than doing nothing.
They want to see the U.S. take a stronger stand against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the regime. As a member of the Syrian American Council, Dr. Lababidi works part-time in Washington, D.C., meeting with U.S. politicians, advocating for freedom and democracy in Syria. They want the ongoing civil war, now stretching 7 years, stopped.
It is a human responsibility at this point for me. It's a humanitarian cause. We have to finish the brutal regime in Syria who's killing innocent people, killing children, women. People just ask for freedom.
According to the UN envoy for Syria, so far nearly 500,000 Syrians have died during this war.
How many people they're going to kill more? He want to finish the whole nation, looks like.
Steve Arkawi is the president of the Syrian American Council here in Phoenix. He says while they all worry for their family members back home, they haven't communicated with them in years, saying it's just too dangerous.
It's very hard to talk to your family over there because the Syrian government, they know we are in opposition of their ruling. So they go after our relative and they retaliate against them. I try not to call, very rarely. On the other end, they will not say anything about the situation, and they want to end the call as soon as possible because they are so afraid.
They still fear the regime, even thousands of miles away from their home country. But despite this, they say they'll continue to be a voice for the people back home, the people of Syria.
Syria will never see peace as long as the regime is in place.
In Scottsdale, Adriana de Alba, Cronkite News.
During President Trump's meeting with French President Macron this week, they discussed Syria, and Macron stressed the country's problem requires more U.S. involvement and a long-term approach.
Wind turbines may be a sustainable way to provide energy in our homes,
but they can also pose a deadly threat to flying animals. Coming up on Cronkite News, how environmentalists are trying to reduce the dangers of wind farms for wildlife.
And it's been pretty hot here in the valley. I'll tell you, we can expect a cool down.
This is my last broadcast as the anchor man of the CBS Evening News, and that's the way it is.
Carrying on the baton of those who came before us, our superb team of journalists, writers, reporters, editors, producers work each and every week to tell the stories critical to you. For Arizona news that matters, tune into Cronkite News weeknights at 5 on Arizona PBS.
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow.
By the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. Being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
"84 people from 19 states across the country are now infected with E. coli, tracked back to tainted romaine lettuce. 31 additional cases are linked to lettuce grown in Yuma. No deaths have been reported, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture can't make an official recall on romaine lettuce, as the specific source of the outbreak is still unknown.
Phoenix is still under a high pollution advisory for the 4th consecutive day this week. The advisory was issued this morning because ozone levels are expected to rise above air quality health concerns and standards. Those with respiratory conditions are advised to stay inside, and carpooling or using things like public transit are ideal for days like today, as ozone forms when vehicle exhaust combines with heat and sunlight. And hopping into our weather, we do have those air quality alerts for today. So we have some parts in Maricopa County as well as Pinal County effective through Friday. So because of that, that is going to be bringing our AQI to unhealthy for sensitive groups. So we do have a high pollution rate. So if you're sensitive like that, you want to make sure you're being careful. You want to make sure that you're carpooling and, like I said, using things like public transit to combat those things. Make sure you're doing okay. Today, right now in 95 in Phoenix, up in Prescott, 83 degrees, 83 in Payson, up at Flagstaff in the Grand Canyon, really nice at 75, and down south at Tucson at 93 degrees. For your evening, we are going to be seeing these high temperatures decrease, and towards our evening at 11 p.m. it's going to be 85 degrees. So don't worry, although it's been hot, you can get outside later and enjoy your evening. As for tomorrow, for our valley forecast for the east side, Scottsdale, your high is 96 degrees, Paradise Valley 97, up in Cave Creek 92, and down in Chandler 98. And then as we move to the west side, Litchfield Park at 97, Peoria 97 is too, pretty much 97 everywhere, up in Whitman at 94 too as well. And then as we head into our 7-day forecast, we are going to be seeing those 90 degrees dip down, and then finally we're going to be seeing them actually go away. We're going to be seeing those 70s and even those 80s come back by next week with a high of 79 on Wednesday.
According to the American Wind Energy Association, wind energy powered 50,000 Arizona homes in 2016, but it may not be as environmental friendly as you think. Noelle Lilly is in Wilcox, Arizona to bring us the story.
Wind farms are a collection of windmills or wind turbines used to provide energy in a more sustainable way. But the turbines have also been deadly. More than 200 bats and one endangered golden eagle have been killed by wind turbines on one wind farm.
And these bats save farmers billions of dollars a year in pesticide use. They're just the natural predators of night-flying insects, And so that saves farmers money, which makes our food cheaper, and it reduces the amount of pesticides in our environment.
A report done by SWCA environmental consultants said that in addition to the golden eagle, a dozen birds were also killed on the farm.
It's just unbelievable how the environmentalists will do anything to save some species or other, but do not mind the slaughter that takes place with birds in any significant wind farm.
Wind farms are a common culprit of bat deaths, according to a 2016 study by the zoology journal The Mammal Review.
The wind farm provides energy to cities like Wilcox and parts of Tucson.
It appears that, at least for some species, that they are attracted to the wind turbines. And as they're flying around, they get struck by the blades.
But he says there are ways to protect bats.
One is to keep wind turbines from spinning at high RPMs during periods when bats are at risk. And the other is to use ultrasonic acoustic deterrents to keep bats away from turbines.
Jay Lair, science director with the Heartland Institute, says wind turbines are neither environmentally safe nor economically friendly.
Any community that goes into wind in a big way after the economic benefits and subsidies, everybody 10 years down the road will be very sorry.
But Hines says that wind energy is here to stay.
Wind energy is a component, and it's growing rapidly. It's not going anywhere. And so, again, our kind of philosophy is to work with the industry to reduce that impact and make it a truly green source of energy.
In Wilcox, Noelle Lilly, Cronkite News.
We reached out to a spokesman for the Red Horse Wind Farm who declined an interview but said the group, quote, has been working with a local wildlife expert to conduct a monitoring program for the golden eagle and bat populations. This story is part of Elemental, a new public media collaboration covering sustainability in the West. That's it for Cronkite News Tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.